Now, I want to draw your guys' attention to a film that I saw in 2019, I believe, but I saw it at home, and it was China's film, The Wandering Earth, and it came out in 2019. That movie was based on the Chinese science fiction novel. Um, what was that called? The Three Body Problem or the Two Body Problem. I forget what it was called. Just a really, really deep Chinese science fiction novel that's specifically a kind of implicit commentary on the Cultural Revolution's legacy, right? And it's not actually obvious how that is. And the basic message of China's Wandering Earth was this. First of all, it was a film that I believe was devoid of villains. I'm pretty sure I recall there are no human villains in that film. And I think the film was basically just about repairing. So the Earth is on this 5,000 year journey or some shit to reach a new sun. It's not 5,000 years, it's like 500 or something. I don't know, it's like 100. I don't know how long it is to reach a new sun. That sun is obviously communism, right? I mean, allegorically it is. And, it's kind of a little bit mundane, the process getting there. And I think the film is just about the ability to persevere into the day-to-day necessities of work and of unleashing the productive forces and attending to the productive forces. And that, in a sense, this is, in a hermeneutic or even mystical kind of sense, that is what socialism is. Socialism is just this way in which humanity attends to this process that doesn't necessarily have an endpoint, right? It's not necessarily you're going to achieve socialism or you're going to achieve communism. Communism and socialism is the process by which humanity attends to its own being and its own necessity. And I think that was the takeaway I got from that film, right? Because the villains, I think the film had all the emotions of heroism and tragedy and all that kind of stuff without any human villains. And even nature was not really depicted as a villain either. I mean, when you think about it, there was no anthropomorphic villain at all. There were just people dealing with all the tragedies and necessities that come with being able to withstand and survive in this world, right? There was anticipation, there was drama, there were high stakes, all that kind of stuff, but not necessarily any human villains. And I thought that was a very deep, deep, beautiful movie. And then the imagery in that movie was just phenomenal. And this is what I'm getting at. The depiction of industry, in particular in that film, the science fiction, all these kind of like thruster reactors, the vehicles in the film, the construction as it was being depicted, it was very much about China's Belt and Road Initiative and China's infrastructural based economy, but rendered into science fiction. It's probably my favorite film of the 2010s. I'm confidently I can say that. My favorite films of the 2010s. It's a very and I think the video game version of that film was Death Stranding, to me, which has a similar message. But in any case, after that film, Wandering Earth, after that film, I came to a judgment, which I may have done a little bit too prematurely. Base. Thank you so much, Serve.
Wandering Earth was very beautiful. I liked how the Earth was represented in a very geological way, if that makes sense.
Yep, I've talked about that before. Thank you so much, Serve. Yes, it's a geological depiction of nature. And it's a very deep, it's the ultimate mecha tanky film, 100%. But after that film, I came to a conclusion, and this was something that I came to the conclusion of actually right before COVID, around 2019, which I said, basically, the American empire and the American unipolar civilization has no more tricks up its sleeve. American soft power is done, right? American hegemony is done. What's the next big American blockbuster? There isn't going to be one. All the American movies today are just about some kind of tragic decline or coping with nostalgia from the past. There's no forward, future-oriented kind of visionary American films anymore. You have Marvel films. That's not what that is, though. Marvel films are nostalgia about comic books from the 70s and the 80s, and they're playing off of that whole childhood bullshit. So this is a conclusion I drew with One Ringer. Then my suspicions temporarily were confirmed. COVID happened, and the response to the COVID crisis by the United States was abysmal compared to China, which did an excellent job of responding to the COVID crisis, right? So this was the apex for all of us people who just see, okay, America's done, China's the future. I think 2020 and early 2021, it was the apex, right? But today we can't really draw that conclusion anymore so easily, at least, right? Today it seems a little bit different. I mean, you had Biden get elected, the presidency, and you have this kind of unprecedented ideological revival, or whatever you want to call it, that's going on in the United States specifically. And then also China and Russia undoubtedly are facing problems right now. No one has ever tried to deny that. So this view that we had in late 2019, or I had in late 2019 and 2020, does not seem so easily defensible anymore. And that requires some evaluation. And the way I decide to evaluate that is through this movie by James Cameron, Avatar 2. And I think Avatar 2 is one of the only films I can name since 2019 that has really become a zeitgeist. Like it really marks a huge shift. Cultural, ideological, and it's just this phenomena, right? This pop culture phenomena that really epitomizes the ideological spirit of the era, at least in America. And for that reason alone, before I get into my review and talk about the film, I recommend this film. Because overall, I mean, we have to talk about what its ideological message and all that kind of stuff is. And I obviously don't identify with that, but it is a good film, okay? It's a great film. It's an extremely impressive film, visually speaking. And I think that's all it really has to be. The story is, I mean, it's not meant to be like this extremely deep story. It's meant to be a visually next level film that's so immersive, you're there in a way, right? And the 3D experience in particular is so important because the film wants to immerse you in that environment. So when Martin Scorsese calls the Marvel films theme park films, this is the ultimate version of that. But I think Martin Scorsese gets wrong is that this is a form of, somehow, a form of cinematic art. And I think this one in particular, in a way that the Marvel ones aren't. And there's a lot of depth to this film in terms of what it's able to capture and concentrate and epitomize as far as the spirit of the era is concerned. So, and I've always admired James Cameron. I've always admired his aesthetic vision in relation to water. He's a big water guy. So obviously this film was like a huge bone to that, right? Overall, definitely see the film. It's worth your time. And if you don't see the film, thank you so much, East.
You should check out the Armored Core trailer. Looks like it's about some kind of mecha civil war. Infrared aesthetic potential.
Thank you so much, Yeast. But I think Armored Core is a video game. So, there's not much there. But I'm not a conservative when it comes to films. What I mean by that is that I'm not someone who's like, oh, I only like Martin Scorsese films. No, I'm a forward, when it comes to films, I believe in progress, quote unquote, right? And, I'm not one of those people who has this inherent suspicion of this new kind of pop culture cinema. Thank you so much, Jeremy.
How do we reinvigorate forward momentum?
I'll get to that. I'll actually get to that, right? Because the film here is really interesting. But I'm not one of those people who just likes old dusty films and hates. I'm suspicious of all blockbuster movies with good CGI. I'm not one of those people. This film is a cultural phenomenon right now, and just like I think Batman kind of was, but I don't think ideologically, I don't think it's going to be as lasting as Avatar is. I think Avatar 2 proves that the American Empire has some more up its sleeve. But in what form, right? Well, that's what I'm going to get to. So Avatar 2, we can't talk about Avatar 2 without talking about Avatar 1. And I have talked about it before a little bit. But I'm basically going to give you a rundown of what Avatar is all about. And Alexander Dugin kind of epitomized this best in his, understanding of what he calls postmodernism, right? For Dugin, modernism is about this. It looks like what it is on its surface value. It's just this bland standardization, atheism, vulgar materialism, lack of tradition, lack of anything, just complete, uniform, mechanical, industrial modernity. And then Dugin says postmodernity is all about simulation, and it's about artificially simulating what is traditional and what is eternal and what is natural. And that this is what it makes it Dajjal, right? And Dajjal is the Antichrist who at first pretends to be Christ, yada yada. It makes it something much more evil, right, than normal modernity, classical modernity. It's almost like it gaslights us about what real tradition is because it artificially simulates tradition. Examples of this, I think, would also be like fascism, like Nazi Germany and stuff, simulating all of these ancient traditions artificially. But in any case, in a way, Avatar 1 was the ultimate expression of that. Avatar 1 is depicting through the highest possible means of technology the most authentic sense of the natural world. So we experience this kind of sense of nature, right? And for some reason, we need the most advanced possible artificiality to experience the innermost and deepest sense of authenticity when it comes to nature. Thank you so much, Lionel.
All the best in the new year.
You too, Lionel. Thank you so much, man. New Year's to you as well. So this is something you should observe at the outset. In order for us to even derive a sense of feeling what is natural and what is authentic, we need the very opposite. And I think that's interesting. I think that's interesting because it leads us to open the question of what nature actually is. What is the difference between something that's artificial and that's something that's natural? Well, if we're already Marxists here, I think that's a really easy answer. And the easy answer is labor, right? Nature just is what is given to us. Nature is the Garden of Eden. It's just everything's on a tree for you to pick and just eat. And I know in Avatar they do hunt and they do all these kinds of things, but that's not real labor. That's the Garden of Eden. And because everything that they're doing is, at the end of the day, enjoyable. You never see a depiction of anything equivalent to real labor in Avatar. You don't see this daily drudge and daily grind of necessity. You just have people with bows and arrows, and it's almost like they're picking fruits off of trees. Yeah, they're hunting animals, but it's the same thing. Thank you so much, Farrakhan.
Greta Thunberg is a descendant of the Mutala-Strom River race. Her platform of net zero emissions is indistinguishable from something BAP would espouse.
Yeah, Farrakhan, I don't know what that is, the Mutala. I don't know what that is, but appreciate the donation. Thank you. Anyway, so it's labor, right? Labor is the thing that separates something that's artificial from something that's natural. It's not actually about whether it's been tainted by the touch of humanity as much as it is about whether it's been tainted by human labor. That's what separates nature from the natural world. Now, so you never see the Avatar blue people. You never see them hungry. You never see them suffering. You never see them, on the brink of starvation. You don't see any of that. So they're living in a Garden of Eden, devoid of labor. Now, devoid of labor, devoid of human labor, which we're going to have to define. But the great thing is that we're going to define what that is through the film. We're not going to have to really go to we're going to make it fun. We're not going to have to talk about this abstract, dry theory. We're going to just use the film to explain the concepts we're going to use to explain the film, right? So, why is there, first of all, this association between women or the feminine with nature? And why are men associated with the artificial or the man-made? Well, it's actually pretty simple. Because I don't want to go too complex with the Lacanian psychoanalysis, but I think you guys can all understand without having to consult any theory. When you're a baby, you have a mother, and she rocks you, and she she feeds you, and, she just takes care of you. And then when you grow up, you actually have to take care of yourself in some kind of way, right? Well, within a family unit, any family unit, this is a universal across all of history. There's no exceptions. The role of men is to introduce the child to that realm of self-constitution, right? Where you have to actually engage in labor. Now, women can nag you. Your mother can nag you. Oh, get a job. You're a fucking neat, right? If you're like Johnny Socialism, who lives with his mom, he's getting nagged by her all the time. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with living with your mom, by the way, but if you're leeching off of her, fucked up. But it's only going to be a man who actually shows you how to do it, who actually shows you how to do labor, right? No matter how much your mother shames you and makes you feel bad about being a fucking loser, if you don't have a father to show you the way, you're never going to learn how to do it. Well, if you just take that and apply that out of the family, it's pretty clear what that looks like for an environment. Nature is what's given to us in the same way that the warmth of a mother is given to us. You just pick stuff out of the trees and you pick it, it's just this harmonious, all-encompassing Mother Gaia, whatever. And then the man-made world is obviously patriarchal, and it's artificial, and it's contrived, and it represents this split from the all, right? That is the mother, that is nature, that requires man to somehow constitute himself and make himself out of something. And so these associations are dualistically represented in the film, but they're never connected in any kind of way. In either one or two. We're talking about two right now. The man is the villain and woman is the hero. Mother Gaia is the hero and then humanity is the villain. Now, despite how villainous humanity is portrayed as, something to note is that first of all, I want to say, the depiction of man-made technology, the depiction of the forces of production, the depiction of this man-made city that they were making and all the vehicles and the mechas, and that level of science fiction, I think, is unparalleled. I think James Cameron, who's always been very good at this, did just such a incredible job with the human science fiction aspect. I think that is like the top quality of any film I've ever seen. Because and there's something very oddly Chinese about James Cameron's depiction of future human technology, because you look at Chinese industry today and it literally looks like that, right? When they build infrastructure or Chinese construction projects, I mean, it literally looks like that. In America, it doesn't look like that. America's very outdated and their methods are very backward and so on and so forth. So that is something really odd in the movie, is that the depiction of industry, although it's represented as the American Marines in America, there's nothing American about it, because it combines something very rare for films to do nowadays, which is a depiction of the rugged, kind of more down-to-earth construction and industry, but also in a way that is futuristic and not just representative of the past. And it seemed like for a long time, only Chinese films really depict this, and this is only really seen today in China, because America's a de-industrializing nation, and China's an ascending industrial country. But, yeah, it looks like Shenzhen or something. It looks, yeah, very... But it's futuristic is the point, right? Usually science fiction doesn't actually depict... American science fiction is just too over the top a lot of the times. It's like almost like it's magic, right? Like Marvel movies, it's just fucking, oh, quantum mechanics, so it's fucking magic. But this film did I mean, yeah, it depicted a grounded science fiction, which is also not like, you know, corroded metal and fucking rusted. It's futuristic and it's glossy and it's aerodynamic in a lot of ways. So that was I really liked that. The visuals for that were just incredible, right? So what was I gonna say? So I'm not gonna just do a whole fucking rundown of the film. I have so much to say about the film. What I find, first of all, speaking about Avatar in general, I think people should take note that this film is really an unparalleled kind of perversion of the ruling elites. Now, James Cameron has made films for a long time, right? And when he made Avatar, that was his coming out, you know? Imagine someone you would have least expected was a furry, and they just, like, came out, oh, I love wearing this costume, man. That's what Avatar is as far as the actual unironic fantasies our ruling elite has. If you remember that episode of South Park where the depict science, the Church of Scientology, and at the end they just like reveal the secret. Oh, it's Xenu, the alien god, and all this like stuff about whatever. I think this is something similar as far as like the occult beliefs of the ruling class is concerned, because for all as enigmatic and like, you know, mysterious as it seems as far as what they believe, what they're planning is concerned, this is really all they have up their sleeve. James Cameron's and the ruling elite in general's vision of a virtuous, good, or at least morally acceptable humanity is this kind of bizarre animal-human hybrid living in the jungle in harmony with nature. And it's nothing you could admit in public without being mocked. But if you make a film that you pour like $500 million into it, you're like openly showing everyone what your fantasies are. And it should be embarrassing, but it's so high budget that it's not. But I think everyone should remember, this is just like the embarrassing, dirty secret of the ruling class just being shown to us. All of us, right? And I think there's something, the film is what is called hyper real, right? Which means it's so artificial that it looks real, right? The blue people, like there's something uncannily real about them because they look absurd. And it's not a children's movie, mind you. In a children's movie, anthropomorphic non-human creatures is a normal thing. But in this kind of film, it's just extremely bizarre, right? But to say that this is just like a dumb film, I think you're just copping out of at least confronting how the aesthetic of our ruling elites. Because no, if you look at like the occult chambers of the ruling class, there probably are some motherfuckers that got surgery, like a high depth form of surgery to look like an animal or some shit, like, you know, I don't know, to look like some bizarre fucking cat or something. And like it's so realistic that it's just shocking. That's how you should react when you watch Avatar. You should like imagine you went into James Cameron's mansion and you went in the basement and there was just like this person who got like millions of dollars worth of surgery to look like a cat. And it looks really bizarrely realistic, but also uncanny. That's what the film, to me, evokes. I'm not going to make a Substack on this, so I'm just going to be... no, it's not worth it. I'm going to be giving you my thoughts, though. I mean, I think there's the whole... It's going to be the whole stream is me talking about Avatar 2, because this is... There's too much to say, right? But anyway, Avatar... now, building the... What are you smiling? What are you smiling? See how she distracts me? Alright. First of all... Alright, I'll let the woman talk for like 2 seconds. Go ahead.
My favorite part of the film, and it was the same part that you clapped.
I did not clap. I don't fucking...
was when they were thanking Mother Earth for saving them. And you clapped.
Okay, so the film, I want to talk about Pandora. Actually, that's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to talk about Pandora first. Because I do think Pandora is a depiction of... It's the ultimate fantasy, I think. But what's different about Pandora is that the fantasy is real. It's depicted as science fiction. You don't often get that in science fiction, right? Pandora is a place where our desires and our reality and our environment are seamlessly connected together. And that's why Pandora is ruled by a mother goddess. Because that's what, you know, being in the arms and the warmth of a mother really means. It means all of your desires are immediately satisfied by the external otherness, right, which is your mother, always attending to your needs and your wants. And there's just this seamless unity that just gets abruptly cut off by the castrative presence of the father, right? So this association is like not difficult to draw and think about. But in Avatar 2, the Pandora, whatever, in Avatar, the Avatar series in general, I think there's something about this which is depicting the role of what we call technology today. Pandora is really just this giant smart city. And if you think about the culture, digital culture, or internet culture, cyber culture, whatever you want to call that, I think that's what it is, cyber culture, it is post-Oedipal. What post-Oedipal means is that it's post-patriarchal, it's post-father, it's post-castration. It's just always satisfaction of our immediate desires. You go on fucking TikTok, you'll find something you like. You browse the internet, you'll find something you like. You go on Discord, you're going on Twitter, you're tweeting, you're fucking watching me on stream right now. You're doing all these things on the internet to immediately gratify your desires with no effect, with no castrative effect. And there's something about Andrew Tate here that's fascinating because Jordan Peterson and Andrew Tate represent the first emergence of some kind of patriarchy trying to claw its way out of the post-Oedipal kind of rhizomatic cyberculture and internet. Well, I think that is what Avatar is. It's the ultimate smart city and it's the ultimate theme park. So the first thing you should think about in your head is that Avatar Pandora is a land of TikTokers. It's a land of TikTokers and YouTubers and influencers and Hollywood celebrities and dreamers, really, right? It's a land of people who dream and aspire to become famous and who are famous. And when you think about it in that way, it's like they're blue. Well, they all have a blue check mark, right? All the fucking blue monkeys or whatever, all have a blue check mark, and they all, they all represent this basically in a kind of implicit way. And when you get to the crux of it, that is honestly what the whole environmentalist ideology comes down to. Now, my attack on environmentalism and my attack on the whole climate bullshit, I don't really care about what the science is. The reason I don't need to care about what the science is because I'm aware of how, within the realm of ideology, there is clearly a pathological attachment to the idea of the environment that goes above and beyond anything science is saying. There's some kind of fantasy, some ideological fantasy people use to cope with their lives about the environment and about nature that they would have regardless of the science. Now, just using some kind of basic reasoning, I think that makes the probability of all of the environmentalist science and climate science being true probably very slim. If there's this pathological need to have this idea of, oh my God, there's a mother nature and there's a harmonious mother Gaia that the indigenous people are all seamlessly connected to and yada, 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 that idea is somehow attractive to Americans and to people living in the West in general, and they would probably have no problem twisting the facts in order to conform to that ideology, because there's something ideologically necessary about that. And one of my interpretations of the ideological necessity of that view is that I see nature as this, within Pandora and within the environmentalist or climate science kind of paradigm, I see nature as this kind of this realm of aesthetic and scientific perfection, right? Nature is scientifically perfect, which means it regulates itself, it takes care of itself, it knows itself. That's the most important thing. It's an object that knows itself. It's also an object which is not just itself beautiful, but which is always evoking some kind of higher beauty than itself. When people say nature is beautiful, I think they're lying. I think when people say nature is beautiful, they're saying that nature reminds them of something potentially beautiful. But an actual beautiful object brings you to the limit experience, the threshold of something like death, right? A truly beautiful object also is tragic and also encompasses the whole range and threshold of human emotion. But when you are in awe of the natural world, I think that is just a part of an experience of beauty, but that's not the experience of beauty itself. And in an era, I've talked about this, the kind of parable of the good and the beautiful. In an era devoid of any sense of the good, which is basically the kind of authority of American patriarchy, right? The Constitution and American Republic and, the military and all this kind of stuff. This is gone, right? There's no real sense of the good anymore. All that remains is the beautiful. So instead of Uncle Sam just pointing at you saying, "We want you," you now have Ariana Grande. People standing Ariana Grande and K-pop. So we live in the era of the beautiful. But it's not that the beautiful is something people actually experience. It's that it's a transcendental object, which is the object of all morality and the object of all experience. Which is always evading and elusive to us. Avatar 2, in particular, does get close to depicting what the sublime, beautiful object is. And maybe when I mention it this way, you're going to understand what I'm saying. Thank you so much, Tanxus.
The Aztecs were one of the few natives that believed in conquering nature. Their capital city was a huge fu to Mother Nature.
Thank you so much, Tanxus. You gonna go? Okay. Yeah. You're gonna go make? Can you bring a water too? Thanks. So, yeah, as I was saying. I'm trying to remember what I just said. Oh yeah, Tanxus. Regarding the Aztecs, I'm not really talking about conquering nature. I think we have to break down what we're talking about first, and then we can talk about, because I think that's just another form of one-sided dualism. It's not about conquering nature, and it's not about destroying human technology. It's about actually understanding what these things are. Because you can't, this is all kind of infantile view as well, right? To be honest. So, the only time Avatar gets close to calling the bluff about the beauty of Pandora is when we're brought to those limit experiences, when they tap into the Mother Gaia consciousness. The blue people have these things on their hair which they use to plug into the roots of the planet or whatever. Either in the water or in the tree or whatever, the big mother tree. And then this brings them to the universal consciousness of the Mother Gaia. Now the character who's a half human, half avatar hybrid or whatever, who has a seizure upon doing this, that is actually where the beauty is. That's the beautiful object. But everything before then, all the green stuff, and that's not actually beautiful. It just reminds you of something beautiful, right? But it's not itself actually what beauty is. And that's an important thing to emphasize here. Because the era of the beautiful doesn't mean everything is beautiful. It means actually nothing is beautiful, because beauty is something transcendent. Beauty is something that is made outside of our grasp and impossible to experience. It's quite literally impossible to experience. The half human, half blue hybrid had a seizure and could not experience it, right? So it's similar when it comes to someone like Ariana Grande. If you ask Ariana Grande fans, okay, what is the beauty of Ariana Grande? They will say, oh my God, you would have a seizure just like that little girl in the movie. It's impossible to fathom. We have to keep making fan cam reels. We have to dedicate our whole life to, oh my God, it's a cult, right? Because she's not actually fucking beautiful. It's just, she evokes the semblance of this perfection that you know exists, you're virtually related to it, but the bluff is never actually fucking called. You never actually fucking experience it, right? The same thing is true for K-pop and all these obsessive K-pop whatever stands. It's the same exact fucking thing, okay? So this is Avatar. This is Avatar's big bluff about what the beautiful actually is. And Avatar's nature is a, oral stage, whatever, kind of Freudian oral stage nature, right? It's a Garden of Eden, and it's also cyber culture, and it's a smart city. Now, interestingly, this is something I also want to point out, and this was true for both this film and the previous film. The scientific expert is always a force of moral agency. Because the era of the beautiful is also corresponding to what Lacan will call the era of the discourse of the university, where pure, impersonal, scientific, and technocratic knowledge reigns. And these films always have, I'm a marine biologist, or I'm a natural biologist, whatever. And these characters are always portrayed in a sympathetic light, where you have some big, masculine, soldier always ordering them around, but these are meek, glasses-wearing scientists. Well, I'm simply reporting the facts, and the facts show me is that what you're doing is morally wrong. But obviously, there's no morality in science, and there's no morality in cold, hard facts. So what this actually represents is this corrupt understanding the scientific institutions have come to have with the prevailing ideological aesthetic of the era, which is about this unattainability of beauty. Because there's something similar when it comes to modern science, only instead of beauty, they call it truth. In modern science, there's a fundamental unattainability of truth. In science, truth is the same sublime object that beauty is. So, what does a scientist and an Ariana Grande stan have in common? They are both seeking something they will never actually have. A scientist wants to infinitesimally approximate truth, but never actually experience truth, never actually arrive at truth. Ariana Grande stan wants to infinitesimally approximate the sublime beauty of Ariana Grande, but they'll never get there. So there is a complete overlap between these two sublimes and these two aesthetics, or these two discourses, as Lacan would call them, actually. Thank you so much, African communist.
Science is fought for at the barrel of the gun.
I don't know if I would say that, but I get what you're saying. Yeah, I definitely get what you're saying. Thank you so much for the 10. Appreciate you, man. By the way, whoever's missing out on this is a retard. I'm sorry. There's no hope for you, and you're mentally retarded. And I thank you so much. Appreciate it. Did you put? Did we have any? Oh, okay. Thank you. Yeah, it's really good. Thanks. Yeah, as I was saying. So the two sublimes that overlap, that Avatar gives to us. In the sublime limit experience of that young you have to watch the film to understand what I'm talking about, by the way. Of the young girl, this is the limit experience of both attaining the ultimate beauty, which is the mystical secret of Pandora, and also the ultimate scientific truth. This is why the aesthetic of modern science and the aesthetic of popular culture are one and the same thing. Scientists, when you call their bluff, okay, how do you have an outlook on being and on the universe that is ultimately coherent, or at least elegant, or at least somehow meaningful? And you basically get the whole thing of, there are millions of stars and everything's so beautiful and everything's so vast. It's like the unattainability of truth is something scientists use as their conduit in order to experience the sublime. Because truth is so unattainable that there's something sublime about it. Why is this sublime? Because all the object of beauty is the realization of the absolute. Human beings and human senses are actually quite simple. To us, what's beautiful is what's true. What's beautiful is what actually realizes the truth of being, or being itself, absolute being. That's all beauty is. There's no secret to beauty. Beauty is just absolute being realizing itself to us, whatever absolute being so happens to be. And the question of how to experience absolute being, how to experience beauty as an object, coincidentally, is also the same question whose founding premise, which is the founding premise of human labor. This is where the analysis is going to get interesting, guys. The question of when is the bluff called as far as the object of the sciences and the object of the beautiful aesthetic, or the Hegelian beautiful soul. Where is the bluff actually called? The bluff is called in the founding gesture, the founding moment that gives rise to human labor. Because human labor does not afford any question of perfection. Human labor is fail again, fail better. That's what labor means. When you're toiling away, you have no assumption that you are you're creating something inherently absolute or anything like that. The absolute lies in the very founding discontinuity, the very founding torsion out of which the necessity arises that man acts upon the world. That kind of object is not an object awaiting you behind something given to you. It's an object that is your cause. It's the object that's your cause. It's the object of an Ottoman soldier ready to die for his fucking caliphate. It's a cause that compels the Stakhanovites in the Soviet Union to work harder and harder than ever before. It's your cause, quite literally, to be in this world. That is what it means to call the bluff. Now, what does this mean for nature? Because to me, the climate crisis and the ideology of environmentalism has nothing to do with anything actually going on in the environment. And it has everything to do with the inability for the essence of labor, the essence of masculinity, and the essence of patriarchy. These are all the same thing, by the way, to disclose itself by phenomenal means, and therefore to be related to in a way that human beings today find sensible. There's something actually related about the news of Andrew Tate's arrest with Avatar 2, because they're both about the same crisis. The crisis of being unable to refound something that cannot be represented through images and through some kind of givenness, which is labor or masculinity or manhood, something like that. The Lacanian phallus, it can't be reduced to an image, and yet it's only through images that we can relate to it. So this is very troubling, right? Nowhere in the internet, nowhere online can you find out how to become a man. Andrew Tate tries to do that. I don't know how successful he's been. But with that crisis comes the inability to derive the compulsion out of which the ability to have the motivation to do work is grounded in and founded in. In a sense, it is kind of like a Dasein, right? But Dasein is just a question. Now we go from Dasein, which is a question of what a being is, a being for whose being it itself is a question, to the answer, which is the object, right? What is the secret of Pandora that James Cameron is hiding from us? I argue that within Avatar 2, the secret of Pandora, and this will radically change your whole view of the film. I am going to radically change it. The secret of Pandora is geology. There is no geology of Pandora, if you notice. There are just beautiful forests and beautiful trees, and then there's beautiful oceans and there's beautiful water. I have to talk specifically about the significance of the water stuff, and I will. There are no plate tectonics, there are no earthquakes, and there are no volcanoes. And there's no semblance of any distress within nature at all, actually. There's no plagues, there's no hunger, there's no tsunamis or anything of that nature. There's just an idyllic, perfect harmony between desire and fantasy. But it's funny. I remember there's a scene where someone from the tribe dies and they go down into the water, and then those plants, whatever, those yellow golden plants that connect all of the beings of Pandora to the Mother Gaia consciousness, kind of just like flash or whatever, and then it's just this kind of sublime. It's the same when she plugged into it's so hard to fucking explain this. Like, they have these things in their hair that they plug into these plants or whatever, and the plants connect them to like the central intelligence of Pandora, right? And it's always a sublime limit experience. And it's the one that gives her a seizure, and it's the one people go to after they die. Now, what is the secret of that? And it's also the secret of the scientists who can only infinitesimally approximate it, like that bitch from the first movie. Oh my god, I'm reading, and the thing about Pandora is it's almost like a super intelligence, and all of the animals and plants, and they all harmoniously work together, and they all coincide in order to kind of like whatever. It's like I'm so amazed by this. Okay, well, you're amazed, and what's the truth of this? I'll tell you, the truth is geology. The truth is like plate tectonics. It's geology. It's this fucking magma, right? That is underneath the surface, and which is popping out through thermal vents and violently asserting itself in volcanoes and earthquakes and these violent abruptions of the natural world. The ones which, notably, the patriarchal Abrahamic religion in the Old Testament describes as the Genesis and as creation.
I want to mention the
Grimes.
supposed natural barrier when the forest people are just entering the fishing village that was made of branches. Are we really supposed to accept that as natural?
I mean, it's science fiction. You know, you have to have a deeper. Thank you so much for the 10, but this is not what I'm not here to just be like, oh, this fucking fantasy science fiction film is not realistic. I want to talk about why they make the thematic choices they do within the film. Not so much to talk about the implausibility of Pandora as actually something real. I mean, of course it's not, right? By the way, guys, I know there's some people, extremely rude fucking people in the chat who are talking about fucking Zimbabwe right now. Get the fuck out of here. If you don't want to fucking hear about Avatar 2, literally get the fuck out of here. Before I fucking ban you permanently, then get the fuck out of here. I don't give a fuck what news you want to fucking report on. This is what I wanted to fucking talk about today. So get the fuck out of here. Literally. Shut the fuck up about this. Oh, Zimbabwe. Just shut the fuck up, dude. Get the fuck out. You know what? Matter of fact, let's just fucking put them in timeout. Anyway. Stop. Anyway, the patriarchal Abrahamic religion of Judaism, you read the Old Testament and it describes a God engaging in an intervention in the world. It is very similar to this kind of geological under subterrestrial reality, you know? Fire and brimstone and, you know, volcanoes and floods and all this kind of stuff. Very much abruption in the so-called natural harmony of the world. But what the nature Gaia worshippers get wrong is that this kind of abruption is actually real. I mean, it actually happens. It's not true that nature is a harmonious place. You could be living for thousands of years in harmony with nature, and some apparently meaningless natural disaster just fucking happens, which rocks your whole fucking world. A volcano happens, or something irregular happens that doesn't happen for a million years, right? Will happen. And then what? How do you fit that within your view of the harmony of nature? You can't. There's no way you can incorporate that within the pagan logic of cyclical wisdom. You have to accept some kind of reality, that there is an abruption, there is a discontinuity, there is a difference in the fabric of being, which is imminent to being, which speaks to something real. And that difference is labor. That difference is what labor is founded upon. Because if we lived in the Garden of Eden and everything was given to us by nature, we would not be laboring beings. I am actually going to do something unprecedented in rolling back women's rights by thousands of years. Stop. Oh my god, what the fuck? This is assault. I didn't agree to this, okay? I'm rolling back women's rights. Alright? I'm still doing it. When women in hunter-gatherer societies are picking berries, they're not engaging in labor. That's not labor. Picking berries from the bushes is not labor. It's not labor. But this is because labor is not an individual activity. Labor is object causal. Labor is just the process by which man acts in relation to an abrupt discontinuity that the socius of man is itself founded upon. So, for example, when man drives a species extinct, okay, and upsets the ecology, or somehow whose presence alters the world around them in some kind of fundamental way, labor is just the way man's activity responds to his own violent imposition upon the world. Before there is any individual form of labor where one individual person is expending energy, there is a founding patriarchal cut in the fabric of being that is the foundation of the socius, the human community itself. And all activity which attests to this radical discontinuity in relation to the outside world, that is what labor is. The Soviet or Russian, I don't know if it was in the Soviet era, the idea of K waves or Kontrashiev cycles confirms this view of labor. This idea that Marx's crisis, with his labor theory of value, the falling rate of profit, is reset with these new technological revolutions in the forces of production. Because these technological revolutions happen first, and then social labor realizes itself in response to that object cause. It's not that individual labor is what builds it. Individual labor realizes something that has already happened. Because when a natural disaster happens, for example, a volcano or something of that nature, right? That is where the necessity of labor is called upon. In order for a human community to survive, it has to somehow respond to the fact of this radical discontinuity in the fabric of natural being by imposing its own discontinuity with the natural surroundings. I think the first form of these were great migrations, right? If you drive a species instinct, there's a great migration, let's say thousands of miles somewhere else, you settle somewhere else. To my knowledge, those migrations are patriarchal migrations. The process of migration, that's led by the men, right? Why? Because the feminine dwelling and harmony with being is radically upset. So the truth of Pandora is under the surface. It's geology. That's the truth. The film does not depict any volcanoes or nothing, right? Not naturally, at least. So how does fire come to Pandora? It comes through a quite literally Promethean people, right? The sky people, that's what they're called in the film. These are Promethean kind of angelic forces of humanity. The first film in Avatar 2, when they're landing on the planet, and it like burns forests within like 100-mile vicinity or something. It's not 100 miles, like a 10-mile vicinity. That is the way the thing below the surface manifests itself to Pandora from the sky. And there's something really beautifully dialectical about that. And what it means is this. It means the narrative that you have these European colonizers coming to colonize the indigenous people, and that's the encounter that Avatar is depicting, is bullshit. It's actually the blue people, the cat people, that are the oppressors. And what they're doing is that they're oppressing some dirty secret below the surface. I propose the possibility. I'm introducing my own science fiction into Avatar. My own, trust me, this is the truth. This is going to be in Avatar 3. I'm making sure it happens. China and Russia are going to do a joint film to expose the truth. The Na'vi, the blue people in Avatar, are actually a parasitic caste. They're an upper parasitic caste who are sucking the life force and the energy of these cave dwellers that live below. that are the Dalits and the untouchables of Pandora. And these Dalits are human. That's the origin of humanity. Humanity began in Pandora as these Dalit untouchables below the surface. And these Dalits, these humans, are exposed to the harshness of nature. They're like Minecraft caves with lava everywhere, and they have to deal with harsh storms and all this kind of things. And they're kept completely hidden and out of sight. The Na'vi don't even mention them because they're untouchable and they're unspeakable, lower caste, even below the Great Mother's whatever tendrils, right? These humans, mankind, had to deal with the fact that Mother Nature was a bitch, right? So what happened is that by some accident, a meteor left Pandora and brought them to Earth or something. I don't fucking know. I'll figure out how they left that place and came to Earth. But then the beautiful poetic justice is that humanity returned to Pandora to wage class warfare against the blue Kulaks, to wage a guerrilla war against them, right? A war of human liberation against the fascist, Nazi, upper caste, blue people. And humanity took all of its suffering that it experienced in Tartarus, the Tartarus of Avatar, right, which is below the thermal vents, and it used this to wield and to become laboring beings. And on Earth, it learned how to build massive ships and steel ships and mechas and all this fucking things and guns. And it's coming back to Pandora as with this Promethean fire and also Promethean vengeance to liberate the Dalit humans that are still trapped in the caverns below Pandora's surface, to liberate them and show them the light, that their suffering is also the key to their liberation. Why? Because when they bear the full brunt of the bitch that is Mother Nature, volcanoes and all this shit, they say you can harness this power and found yourself upon this power. You can create great things if you harness the power of fire, for example. You can create steel and iron and all this kind of cool stuff, right? So this is the truth of Avatar. Now when you watch Avatar, it's not the Europeans coming to colonize all the indigenous, nature. That's stupid, right? I'll tell you the truth, right? Now, Americans love Avatar 2. Every American loves Avatar 2. All of them love it. They always loved Avatar, right? And they say, this is just like the Iraq War. This is just like European colonization. No, it's fucking not. Europeans never went to some fucking matriarchal society at peace with everything itself and then just decided to fuck it up for no reason. That was very rare. That's not what scares the Europeans. What scares the Europeans is when man is in communion with the irreducible violence that founds a community. Thank you,
Kinda like old
Tanxus.
Halo lore. Remember when humanity were originally meant to be the Forerunners? They were the Reclaimers just like the humans in Avatar.
Yeah. Sure. Thank you so much, Tanxus. So, here's the thing, right? As I was saying, you kind of threw me off a little bit. Let me just remember what I was saying. Yeah. The thing that upsets Europeans, the colonial encounter, the violence of the colonial encounter is not about the fact that there's this split between nature and technology that happens. That's not true. That's the European fantasy, actually. Thanks so much, Janar. The colonial fantasy imposes upon the savages the idyllic fantasy of nature, but that is not what grounds the violence of the colonial encounter. If you read Fanon, actually, who drew a lot from Lacan and Kojev, the violence of the colonial encounter is the exposure to an alternative patriarchal, phallic authority. When the European realizes they're not the only fucking man on Earth, and they see that the same constitutive violence of their own patriarchy can be reflected back upon them and others, that's what they don't fucking like. They don't like the humanness. When I say humanness, I mean the aspect of this violent break and torsion from nature and the harmony of nature. That is what propels the Europeans to have to put down the red man, or the yellow man, or the brown man, or the black man. They gotta put you down first, because holy shit, there's a little too much toxic masculinity. You see, the Europeans go to Africa, or they go to America, oh, we gotta put down these motherfuckers. These are mean motherfuckers with a little too much toxic masculinity. So let's put them down on the fucking barrel of a gun, and then once they're pacified, right? Once they're pacified, now you can write beautiful stories about how they're so in tune with nature, and they worship the feminine. They're so in tune with nature. But that's because you pacified them first. What about the revolutionary violence of the anti-colonial and anti-imperialist struggle that Fanon so often emphasized? You don't get any of that in the film. Fanon defended the burqa in Algeria. The Algerian revolutionary said, no, Fanon, we're progressive. We don't want this shit. He said, no, this burqa means the imperceptibility of your woman to the French colonizer. This burqa means your woman is inaccessible to them. They're not fully transparent, and the all-encompassing scientific and rationalistic worldview of the French imperialists and colonizers, everything has to be categorized. Everything has to be classified. Everything has to be assimilated and made transparent. It's the opposite of fucking Pandora, right? He said this burqa is your liberation because you're shutting yourself from their gaze. You're not letting them see you. Pandora is the total opposite. Everything is seen. Everything is seamlessly accessible to us. Oh, it's so beautiful. This is exactly the colonial perspective. There's nothing about this film which betrays any parable about the encounter between colonizers and indigenous people or whatever. It's a fantasy that only is possible after the colonialism has happened. Is something to emphasize. So these blue people, think of the blue people in Avatar, not as the native indigenous Americans or tribes in the Amazon. No, they're more like white, or you don't have to pick out white people, but mostly white. Coachella goers, right? They're tripping on acid and LSD, and they're these elitist, rich motherfuckers at Coachella. They're all doing that shit. And then below them in Tartarus, that's where the real humanity, the real proletariat, is fighting the elements, right? That's how you should see Avatar. That's how you should view that film. Now, another interesting thing is that, you look at the Iraq War. If the Iraqis or if the people in Afghanistan were like these fucking blue people, you think there would be any violence from the U.S. military? No. The thing that gets consent for war is when we see, how they're, treating their women like shit. They're covered up in burqas and they can't go to school. And the men are bearded and they're very patriarchal and violent. I mean, that's what gets consensus for war. That's the imperialist mentality. This stupid fucking idea that Twitter people have that, we're just going to the Europeans just went to these villages where everyone was in harmony with nature. No, they weren't. Those were patriarchies. You know what I mean? That's what bothers them. If Afghanistan, you think Afghanistan, the U.S. would have to bring guns to Afghanistan if they were just, blue people? No, they wouldn't. It's because they got beards and they're blowing shit up. Those are real motherfuckers in Afghanistan. Right? What is the number one weapon of war in popular imagination from the Middle Eastern resistance, who are supposed to be the blue people? It's bombs. It's fire. It's guns. It's things that in Avatar are depicted as elementally villainous, right? The truth is, it's the blue people who are the imperialist colonizers, and it's the humans that represent the colonized and the oppressed. That's the truth. But this film was The Way of Water, because a lot of what I'm talking about is applicable to Avatar 1. The Way of Water, Avatar 2. I mean, superficially, it's just a clear parable, or it's a clear raise awareness about the coral reefs, guys, and whatever, right? But I thought this film was a little disturbing because it depicts so much killing of humans, and their arms are getting ripped off, and this is because they're hunting whales. And I think it's kind of disturbing how, you know, there's so much viciousness, and there's so... Okay, just come pull up a chair. Why are you typing in the chat on the fucking couch? Just pull up your chair. Fuck's sake. Alright. Anyway. There's coral reefs is what I said. I think in the film, James Cameron did something kind of interesting, which is that the first film, Elementally, was about Earth versus the sky, right? Now this one was about water as something even more closely related to nature, which I appreciated. It's correct, right? But in addition, there's also something kind of twisted I found about the film, which is that I'm not sure if this was true for the first one, but to me, The Way of Water perfectly aligns with some recent comments by Cameron, where he was like, testosterone is a toxin that men, if they know what's good for them, have to purge from their body. He said something kind of weirdly along the lines of that. And what I find a little disturbing about that is that in the film you can see how that's what the way of water always is. The way of water is pretty much give up any patriarchal memory and simply give in. If you give in, the water will take you, and the orcas and the whales, and you just gotta give in to your surroundings. And that's how you survive on Pandora in general. Just, you see James, whatever his name is, the guy, the good guy, the human guy, he's struggling to raise his family. And you can clearly see he brought over a lot of his parenting techniques from Earth. And he's always kind of wrong to have those techniques. And the moral of the film is just kind of like, this is just the kind of cope of the forest people and the tree people, and that the water people are more about going with the flow, I guess, right? But I think there's something contemporary about the theme of water today. When you look at the state of Atlanticism, right? Which is quickly turning into a kind of Pacificism, if you want, right? The Indo-Pacific shift toward containing China with the Navy, right? It's the last source of American hegemony and American power to stop the Belt and Road Initiative. Now that I'm going to talk about in a second too, because that's important. But I think it's just this like weird mysticism of Atlanticism, of the openness of the open society and water, and learn how to just be open and purge the toxin of your masculinity and the testosterone from your body. So there's something very... What I found so disturbing about that kind of giving in thing is that also it implies the opposite in some kind of way, which is this extreme aggressiveness of the male blue people characters, which is like depicted as cute or whatever, but it's like Generation A, which is the next generation, is already kind of like acting like that, right? And all this is just, see, I'm going to tell you something. If you think we're living in a toxic masculine era, sorry, if you think we're going to be entering the Mother Gaia era, just means men are going to be pacified. They're not going to be violent and dangerous anymore. No. Men are going to be more violent, aggressive, and dangerous than ever before in the matriarchy. Because in a matriarchy, what man doesn't have is accountability. He just has his feeling. So when man just gives into his feeling, his natural feeling, he's, what is he going to do? He's going to rape, and he's going to kill, and he's going to murder people. And somehow, it's not a world-shaking thing to do, because you're always in the embrace of the matriarchal Mother Gaia. And you guys know what I'm talking about if you're, if you witness, how many of you have witnessed the impotence of female authority over a wild, aggressive, and angry, like, adolescent or teenage son? I've seen that a lot myself, right? And it gets scary how fucking aggressive they can get. It can get fucking scary, right? And I think the film kind of depicts that as just like this cute thing or whatever. Like when they're making these faces and sounds with their face, and there's kind of impotent, lashing out kind of anger and so on and so on. So I think it's a very scary, ominous thing. I mean, they're depicting violence in the film. I guess the part where the gory arm gets ripped out. Are we supposed to be happy that a guy's arm got ripped off because he's fucking killing whales? Who gives a fuck about whales? Just for a second, pause your fucking dumb, stupid ideology shit. That's a human being. No, it's all it's everything. Oh, kill him! I'm so enamored by the beauty of the whales. Kill him!
Just taking the whale oil, selling the oil, which hurt to the class.
It doesn't matter. He didn't deserve to die and gorily have his arm chopped off because of a fucking whale. That's stupid, right? It's like people are now getting to the point where this is the scary thing about the future that I think Avatar 2 is hinting at, right? It's like the bluff of the sublime will never be attained, but people have somehow gotten this idea of like, okay, you're the one preventing me from having it. You're the one preventing me from attaining the beautiful object. So I need to kill you and cut you out so that my gaze can be toward this Ariana Grande beauty. Like, look at, who are the most vicious, violent fucking people on the internet? Stans, aren't they? That's for a fucking reason, right? Because even those stans don't even have a specific ideology, and they don't have this kind of like political, they just care about the beauty and the sublimity of the celebrity. Violence somehow comes so easy to them because it's so easy to hate. It's so easy to fucking hate others when you feel like they are the source of your inability to be human or like experience or attain the human unity with the otherness, right? With the perfect object. Like, it's so easy to have hatred, genocidal hatred of someone when you feel they are the source of your inability to complete yourself, right? And in the same way that stan culture is, for whatever bizarre fucking reason, so violent, right? For whatever reason that is, that same thing will inevitably translate into politics. And the political form of that, and this is where I'm going to talk about the kind of geopolitical significance of Avatar 2, is leftism. Leftism is an ideology of the transcendent beauty or the transcendent perfection of modern politics, of political modernity, where everyone is the premise of complete equality, right? Or complete emptiness of substantive content, where, for example, there is a difference between me and Nadia, right? With leftist view, that difference, there's nothing substantive about that difference. It's just a result of oppression, for example. So this is the ideology, the extremely potent ideology of leftism that is like stan culture, but much worse. Because they're not just standing a specific person anymore. They are standing the ultimate and unattainable object of morality and beauty and truth in the world, right? And the bluff, by the way, you'll never achieve communism. You'll never achieve the socialism. You'll never achieve the revolution. But what you will fucking have is Antifa bashing people's fucking head in for the smallest promise that this person is getting in the way of complete, perfect justice in the world. Avatar 2, I think, is part of this aesthetic of what I would just vaguely call leftism or wokeism or environmentalism, or whatever you want to fucking call it. And I think that is fully in line with the geopolitical stakes of the film, in both form and in content. Now, geopolitically, I'll wait for this to go through.
This
Thank you
is
so
sort
much,
of like the
KGB.
teddy bear analogy you used to describe leftists, no?
So, sort of, yeah. Actually, kind of, yeah. I would say so, yeah. But anyway, geopolitically, I think the way of water, you can look at it as the Indo-Pacific, right? That's the most obvious one. There's a shift to the Indo-Pacific. Environmentalism is sure to be a weapon within the arsenal. Conservationism of American imperialism in order to hold back and stop. See, look, environmentalism and conservation and indigenism are three weapons that are sure to be and already are being weaponized by the State Department. Thank you so much, Defend. By the State Department in order to kind of attack China and Russia. It's an ideological worldview that motivates people to be opposed to China and Russia. And it also happens to be something that is directly weaponized against them. Like, for example, trying to impose new international environmental regulations to stop the industry of developing countries. You saw Putin's response to Greta Thunberg, and that's what we're dealing with. And then there's also the kind of indigenism. Oh, we have to free the indigenous Siberians from Putin's colonialism. We have to free the indigenous Chinese. I mean, there's people on Twitter, I think, you know who she's called? Kissinger or something? She's called Theresa or some shit. She's called Theresa. I don't know what she's called. She directly talks about, oh, China's a colonial country. She's like a Maoist, right? She talks about, oh, land back for the indigenous people in China and Russia and so on. That is the new State Department ideology. It's in James Cameron's Avatar 2. And the proof is in the fucking pudding. If you think Avatar 2 is some revolutionary fucking film that's critiquing the US empire, ask yourself why it's the most popular fucking film in the US empire right now. Ask yourself that question. Why is it the most why? If you're a space alien, so it's China, Russia, America, what's the film that all the Americans are watching and loving? It's Avatar 2? Huh. I guess we're on the verge of a revolution and this is great, right? No. This is already the ideology of the State Department and the American empire. I don't know how to break this to people, but Hollywood films do not get hundreds of millions of dollars to be made if they don't conform and execute the ideology of the ruling class. Every Hollywood movie you ever watched that you thought was making a critical commentary on the status quo completely deceived you. Like, you are so wrong about it being critical in any capacity. There's no way you see an American Hollywood film that gets the backing and funding like James Cameron's Avatar that isn't somehow enforcing the ideology of the status quo, including the religious blind kind of worship of science and scientific expertise that you see in the film, where scientific knowledge and scientific expertise blends seamlessly with the beauty of Pandora, the mystical kind of infinite beauty of nature as depicted in Pandora. So, that's important to bear in mind. Additionally, geopolitically speaking, the film is very clear in form and content of what we're talking about. As I mentioned before, the human industry that you see in Avatar 2, there's nothing American about it. It's very Chinese. And then what does Pandora represent, as I just said? It's the cyberspace culture, right? It's social media culture. The seamless blending of fantasy with reality. LGBT identities, furries, all that kind of... That's... The blue people are the epitome of that. They attain that, in a way, right? Okay, so it's very clear, the two sides of this, right? It's China's industrial civilization versus the American civilization of soft power, woke ideology, and influencer culture, and TikTok, and YouTubers, and Hollywood, and Disney fantasies, right? Because that's what America still has going for it. America's not an industrial civilization anymore. What it still somehow manages to lead the way in is the realm of desire, really, the realm of people's fantasies. What do people find desirable and beautiful? I mean, when it comes to Disney, it's soft power seems Marvel and all that. I mean, that's still alive and running, right? So America still rules Dreamland, and Pandora is Dreamland. And China may have an edge when it comes to industrial civilization, but America has the edge when it comes to the realm of our dreams and our, desires. TikTokers versus industrial civilization. Who is going to win, right? Well, I will say, don't underestimate the power of dreams. Because in the case of Pandora, our Pandora, which is the United States, may be a deindustrializing country, but we still do have the strongest military on Earth. And we also have the most powerful nuclear arsenal on Earth. So when those dreams and that wokeism, that environmentalism becomes weaponized, which we're already starting to see, by the way, it can be a very, very dangerous thing. It's like in Avatar when, the blue people became dangerous and the whales were cutting people's arms off and shit. That's where you could really see America has no more wealth to offer the world, materially speaking. But what it does have is this kind of enthralling, fantastical fantasy that it's somehow also weaponized with the most powerful military on Earth. Now, by the way, what does that remind you of? Because to me, it reminds me of the first Disney-fied political leader in the world, which was Adolf Hitler. Hitler didn't offer the Germans civilization. He didn't offer them an industrial civilization or a new kind of, revolution in the productive forces and all this innovation and stuff. He offered them a dream and war. Fantasy, a fantastical kind of semblance, where he supposedly hypnotized the German nation, and he was this sensational media personality. He was a star, basically, who also kickstarted the industrial rearmament of Germany in order to invade and declare war on everything to his east. That was a very dangerous combination. Thank you so much, Michael Pass. I can confidently say that the first blue Na'vi, that's what they're called, the Na'vi, the first Na'vi, first blue monkey in history, was none other than Adolf Hitler. Adolf Hitler was the first blue guy in the world. So when you watch Avatar, I want you to think of these blue people and put a Hitler mustache on them, because that's what you're dealing with. They're blue Hitlerites. That is quite literally what they are, blue Hitlerites. I do think Pandora should also, and then so I went from an analysis of kind of ontology, I went to geopolitics, now I want to talk about economy. I think Avatar is also interesting. When it comes to the understanding of labor we should have. Because although I mentioned how when the Na'vi are hunting, all this kind of, it's not labor, right? It's just taking from what already exists. Our advanced economy here in the United States and the Western world seems to be resembling that. And the structure of a smart city, the political economy of the fourth industrial revolution resembles that. When things are mostly automated, and it seems like whole economies are driven by attention and consumerism, and there's UBI around the corner, and then you had Trump's checks during COVID. This seems to be a new threshold in the productive forces where, you know, society is becoming kind of like Pandora, where you just kind of can take, but as Bataille will teach us, there's an economy of consumption, there's an economy of wasting, and there's an economy of taking, such that even when you're doing something passively, just consuming, like an infant suckling their mother's teat, there is an economy to this somehow. There's a order, there's a rational structure. It's not just some totally perfect thing. There's still some discontinuity that emerges here. So where does labor re-emerge as a meaningful category of political economy in an age of total automation, or from the very opposite perspective, in a Pandora fantasy where all of your wants and wishes are already immediately around you in some perfect Garden of Eden, right? I think labor must be examined. And a political economy should be re-examined, because as misogynistic as I am, the feminine element is eternal. It is eternity, actually. That's what the way of water, it's the eternal mother chaos, the waters of the womb, right? And despite every historical revolution in the productive forces, the feminine eternity of givenness just deepens in its infinity, and it's an eternity. So this is a dialectic, right? That's why I did not initially speak so easily about... Did I thank Michael Pass? Thank you so much, man. Holy fuck. Thank you so much for the 50, man. Appreciate it a ton. Thank you, man. Appreciate that. I didn't speak so easily about just conquering nature, because it's really not possible. Nature also has a history. So the more man deepens the history of labor, the more the history of nature is deepened. which is what is so beautiful about geology. I think labor will seriously reassert itself as a category of political economy after something like what happened in Death Stranding, which is an apocalypse. Because, like I said before, labor founds itself and grounds itself in an apocalypse, in an abrupt discontinuity with the givenness of nature. And whether that apocalypse has already happened in the form of COVID, or whether it's going to be some future natural disaster, we have yet to see. But the era of labor, communities of labor, is upon us. Maybe Andrew Tate represents that in a way. People like him and Jordan Peterson. Maybe they represent this reawakening to the reality of labor in an era of pure consumption and whatever. Through this return of but I don't know if Andrew Tate, I made this critique initially, I don't know if he is patriarchy. Because where does Andrew Tate and Ariana Grande begin and end? You know what I'm saying? Where does his role as an actual patriarch begin and his role as a embodiment of sublime perfection like Ariana Grande end? And that much is not clear to me. And it's very strange. I think there's different Andrew Tates. Some of them can be based, but another kind can be the DeSantis deception and a hermaphrodite combination, like a false revival. Like, this is what DeSantis represents, the neoconservatism of DeSantis, the revival of Western civilization, this artificial kind of salvation from the crisis we face. An artificial return to traditional values and so on, which really represents its opposite. This may be upon us.